You have your ticket? You don't have one? No problem. Just hit the subscription button below. Come on in. Hey guys, DFG here, Gideon's Flight. Just want to take a moment and discuss, a topic that I talked about, I guess about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I'm going to start this off by telling you, and I'm just going to say this to you, and I say this in all sincerity. United States government is not your government. And I know there'll be people who push back and say, oh, well, yes, it is. Okay, well, that's fair. You can say that. But in my personal opinion, the United States is not our government. The government is not our government. And here's a classic example of why I say this. If you remember, guys, a few weeks ago, there were 2 jetliners planes, the MAX 737 or the 737 MAX 8 planes that crashed, one in Indonesia, the other in Ethiopia. If you recall, Fox News 5, or the 5, this program on Fox, had their commentators, tell everybody that the whole reason why those planes crashed was because of the lack of piloting of the pilots in those 2 countries. Only till later, 3 or 4 days later, the president decides to pull the planes out of the sky. Now here's what's so critical about it. Here's why I say that. Now, you would think that United States government, the Federal Aviation Administration, who are particularly in place to ensure that anytime you get on a plane, that the utmost safety is being considered. Yet, it took every country that had those planes to pull those planes and ground those planes before the United States and Donald Trump finally said, okay, we're going to take the planes down. Now, you may say, okay, well, how's that news? Dale, I mean, we all heard that. Well, what I just heard, and you can validate this, as I always say, check behind me. Southwest Airlines, one of the very airlines that was the most resistant, for obvious reasons, because they had the most planes and they had the most profit to lose, had 2 pilots moving one of those planes, those same planes that we were told that were safe, moving planes from one terminal to another terminal, not a terminal, wherever they keep the planes. It'll come to me in a second. They were moving it from one state to another state, and guess what happened? The plane had serious engine problems, and he had to turn the plane around. And I'm talking about in a very, very short time. They only had 2 pilots, pilot and co-pilot, on the plane. But the situation was so dire that they had to turn that plane around. Yet, they professed, Southwest included, that their planes were safe a couple of weeks ago. They swore on it. We know our planes are safe. Now, you can't find one of those planes flying anywhere in the sky. Now, you may ask again, well, how do I associate that with the government? Because the government is the Federal Aviation Administration. At least the Federal Aviation Administration is a part of your government. Okay, it's a federal regulated governing body to ensure that if you ever go up in those skies, 30,000, 35,000, feet up there, that you're not going to come down prematurely, if you get what I mean. Yet, they continue to support Boeing, had nothing negative to say about Boeing, and even to this day, are not really criticizing Boeing. Why? Because Boeing is corporate America. Our government is Boeing, and Boeing is our government. So when I make the statement that America or the government is not your government, that's the premises that I'm using to share that with you. And the sooner we get that, the better off we're going to be. There's an old saying, if you're in a room of people and there's one fool there and you don't know who the fool is, it's probably you. And I'm telling you that they are making plum fools out of every single one of us. Set aside all these other issues that they're promoting, and and all these other issues that we're dealing with, that they're creating the hostile environment to exist. Because I would venture to tell you that there's no problem in this country that if you had a government of the people, by the people, for the people, that would be able to not only exist, but to be able to function if the government didn't want it to function. But it wants this to function. And I know a lot of people may think about this or think that, because I've had people challenge me on this whole, race is being promoted by the government because it's trying to divide us. Well, I agree with that in principle. I think the government does promote race. Anytime it exploits crack cocaine and ties that into policing and jailing, and then opioid addiction as more clinics and help. You couldn't. How would I not say that they're not supporting a racial divide? But also in my statement, it's still a reality. Yeah, they're pushing it and they're stirring it up, but at the end of the day, it is being acted out. It's being acted out every day. In other words, racism is not a figment of someone's imagination. Bigotry is not a figment of someone's imagination. You get called a nigger a couple of times, you'll understand clearly that wasn't a ghost. That came from wherever that sound came from, that body that said it, that was not a figment of your imagination. Or you get called anything, for that matter, bitch, whore, with, all these terminologies. That's real. So, we can say, well, someone is pushing it and this stuff is being created, for the divide. But at the end of the day, that's a reality. Now, I know I digress when I brought that in, but I want to be clear that everything that's going on inside of this country is because there are entities within your federal government that's promoting it. And again, let me give you two more examples. I just told you about Boeing. Boeing would have let thousands of people lose their lives rather than lose a dime, and Southwest Airlines included. If they would have allowed all those planes to just drop out of the sky rather than stand back and say, oh no, we have a problem. It took every other country that flew those planes to ground those planes before the United States would do it. That's like having a room full of people and somebody, say, hey, fire. And everybody leaves except for the one individual who's saying, I don't believe there's no fire. And then he looks around and says, well, everybody going, I guess I'll go too. Maybe there is a fire. I mean, if that ain't the most asinine mentality that I can think of, but that's what happened here in this country. And again, if you think that your government is your government, then explain to me, when did they come to you and ask you about was it okay for us to support a coup in Venezuela? When did they come to you and ask you, was it okay for us to be in Syria supporting ISIS? Now, I know some of you guys were going to say, oh, look, stop the silliness. I don't have time for those kind of games. Like I said before, if you don't know, it's only because you don't want to know. And there are a whole lot of people who would rather just jump on the bandwagon like sheeple and just say, I don't care what the facts are, I'm doing it anyway. And that's how genocide happens. That's why we have every year now, over the last couple of years, more Americans dying from opioid overdose than car accidents. More opioid deaths than died in Vietnam in a 12, 15-year time in 1 year, because you're in denial. And you'd rather be in denial. You'd rather say, well, I don't care no matter what. Okay. Keep on watching your sons and your daughters die. Keep on. Just keep on with that same ignorant mentality. And I'm not just talking about opioids. I'm just talking about everything else that's going down. The dumbing down of our students. The false education these kids are getting in these schools that causes them to come out of these schools with as dumb as a bag of rocks. Most of them. Not all of them. Most of them. I don't know anything about anything. And I said before, go challenge them. I mean, I was talking to some kids recently. I think I shared that with you. Asked them, just quote the first 10 amendments to me. Had no idea. Now, if you don't teach kids about the Constitution and they're supposed to be Americans, then what is America and what is the government? I mean, if you were a foreign person coming from another country and you wanted to get citizenship here, you would have to know about the Constitution. That would be mandatory. Yet, your children, American children, don't know. And you don't think that's a problem. Well, of course you don't think it's a problem, because if you thought it was a problem, you'll be doing what I'm doing, screaming and shouting. You know what I'm saying? And making sure that I said from the highest mountaintop that they know this is going to stop. You're not going to take our tax dollars and use those dollars against us. Because when you look at big pharma, you look at big military, you know what I'm saying? You look at the prison, mass prison. All those things are anti-American. Anti-American. Yet, they're taking your dollars to finance things that are going against you and me. So, I just challenge you, to think critically. You've heard me say it before, independently. And you may say, well, what is the solution? Thinking independently. Getting together in your communities and asking those real tough questions. Hell, talk about crime in the inner cities. Talk about drugs. Talk about racism. Talk about, the infeminizing of American men. At least the attempt to, they call it toxic masculinity. We haven't forgotten about that. Tell your man to don't be so masculine. Be like your sister. And see, she's sweet and she's nice. And she'll feel more comfortable if you're like her. Excuse me with that low pitch. I don't talk like that. But my point is, and I want it to be understood, that there are things that can be done. But none of it's going to happen if we walk around in denial, head in the clouds, as they say. I'm going to end this video with telling you, that's your government. When it came down to those pilots damn near crashing, all of a sudden, we're going to wait a little while before we put the planes back up. But I'm telling you, I can't foresee myself getting on a 737 MAX 8 or MAX 9 Boeing plane. That's just me. I'm damn sure going to look and say, okay, what kind of plane is that? If that's the plane, I'll catch the bus, train, or I'll drive. But you do what you have to do. But I'm saying to you guys, it's not going to get better until we, as the citizenry of America, and that's the strange thing coming from a copper color man. I know a lot of my, fellow copper color Americans, Native Americans, Aboriginal Americans, I'm sure you'll be saying, dude, okay, did you get up this morning and have a shot of whiskey? No, I didn't. I'm just talking holistically here, okay? I know in many cases we're that's, it's them and them and them and them again, and then us and them, and us who's supposed to be them, according to some of them. All right, so I'm not confused, but this anything that happens to America is gonna happen to you if you live in America. So you're gonna have to understand that. So you're gonna have to build from both sides, is what I'm saying here, especially in something like this. All right, so I'll end the video, but I'm telling you, open up your eyes. You've heard me talk about this before. It reminds me of, this is how I see how the government and I see our citizenry, okay? There's two wolves and a sheep, deciding what they're going to have for lunch. Obviously, government wolf, you the sheep. Do you like lamb chops? DFG, get in flight. Talk to you soon, guys. Appreciate you. Bye now.